Oh, there we are. There. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Clevey, and I'm the former Vice President and current Secretary of GLREA and the host for the Renewable Energy Seminar Series. Tonight, we're going to be talking about GLREA, planning the work and working the plan in 2023. We have a presentation by GLREA's John Freeman, our Executive Director, and John Richter, our esteemed Senior Policy Advisor. We're going to give you a snapshot of hits and misses and home runs from last year, and then how we have built on that momentum and what we plan to do in the coming year. So as a kickoff to the next year. Our financial sponsors for this series are the Michigan Department of Environmental and Great Lakes and Energy, or EGLE, McNaught and McKay Solar Company, and Harvest Solar Company in Ann Arbor. Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association, we were formed in 1991, and we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization supported by our members to educate and advocate for renewable energy in Michigan. If you're not a member, you should consider joining it and join our solution. You can do that by going to www.glrea.org and clicking on membership. Our GLREA Zooms happen every single Thursday of every single month. First Thursday of the month is Ann Arbor Solar Stories, a series of case studies on meritorious solar installations in Ann Arbor. Second Thursday of the month is my Renewable Energy Seminar. Our third Thursday of the month is a Detroit Solar Stories hosted by Diane Van Buren, who is a member of our board of directors. She also does a series of case studies on meritorious projects in the Detroit area. And the fourth Thursday of each month, my Solar Stories is Michigan and questions and answers on energy issues, hosted by John Sarver, who looks at meritorious projects in the remaining parts of the state, which covers most of the state. The Renewable Energy Seminar that I host covers topics of interest to clean and renewable energy users, renewable energy businesses, and advocates. Our seminars include content ranging from technology to business to public policy. It's the event is a Zoom event held in the second Thursday of every month from 7 to 8. Questions and comments and suggestions should be directed to me. My email is there, mclevey123@gmail.com. I ask you to please remember to mute yourself, and also please hold all of your questions until the end of the presentation, when you can raise your hand under reactions and ask a question, and the host will call on you. I want to welcome John Freeman, our esteemed Executive Director, and John Richter, our esteemed Senior Policy Advisor, to the 2023 kickoff of the GLR Renewable Energy Series. Tonight, our speakers will talk about creating and working the GLR strategic policy agenda for 2023, a policy that effectively integrates GLREA's plans to expand our ability to influence the public process in Michigan, our utility case intervention that John Richter is going to talk about tonight, increase our influence in the public policy arena, our do-gooder, which is a communication tool that allows our members to talk directly with elected representatives on issues of importance to renewable energy in Michigan, our bigger social media footprint, including what we're doing tonight, and our improved GLREA communications with our MI Sun Rising, MI Sun weekly newsletters, and others, and email alerts that we send out to our members. Expanding our capacity to speed up the solar train in Michigan. We're launching a large membership drive for 2023 to grow our membership, and we're also launching an effort to strengthen our business members with helping them do a number of things, including getting access to qualified employees. And lastly, expanding education for Michigan citizens on the benefits of solar energy. We have a Solarize program that we're rolling out this year. Publications, we're putting the finishing touches on a guide for local governments on how to do community solar, and our Solar Stories, renewable energy seminars and communications that we're seeing tonight. So with that, I want to turn this over to our, again, esteemed Senior Policy Advisor, John Richter, to start the bidding. John, it's your screen.
Okay, can you see that? Okay, so I'm going to talk about our battles in policy in 2022. We have worked both with the Michigan Public Service Commission and the state legislature. We are an active intervener in electric utility cases that come before the Michigan Public Service Commission. And in 2022, we were interveners in 2 rate cases, one for Consumers Energy and one for DTE Energy, and 3 integrated resource plans. Every 5 years, at least, each of the Michigan utilities have to submit a plan regarding how they're going to meet their customers' electricity demand 5, 10, and 15 years out into the future. That's an integrated resource plan. So we are in 3 of those, one for consumers, one for DTE, and one for Indiana Michigan Power, which covers a small portion of southwestern Michigan.
John, if
we
you
also
can,
worked in the legislature.
Excuse me, John, if you can you expand the slide to fill the screen?
Oh, I was afraid of that. Okay.
From beginning, I think it'll do it. Just click up on that left. See if that does it. No, it didn't. Oh, the better it was.
Yeah.
Now drag the right-hand side of the bigger rectangle over to the right.
Bigger rectangle.
What rectangle?
Anyway,
All right.
let me try something.
Just do an escape first of all to get out of it. This is Janice.
Well,
Do an escape to get out. Hit escape.
okay. I
I
did.
haven't hit it. It didn't work.
Try hitting the drop down in the display settings and set it so it's showing. When you do that, it should give you an option to
Just do a slide.
go out of.
There's
Right
the-
now, you're in presentation mode.
There you
gotta
go.
Get to real. Oops, that didn't work.
All right.
Go up to slideshow now.
I can't find slideshow on this screen, Janice.
Put it back on there. It was at the
Oh,
top.
now I get Zoom quit unexpectedly.
Okay. Go back to share screen.
Share screen. This is one option. Okay, that's pretty close, huh?
We can't see anything yet.
No, that's because it crashed again.
Gee.
John, do you want me to bring up the copy I got?
Yeah, why don't you do that, John?
Yeah, do that, John.
Sounds better.
John Richter has to stop screen sharing.
Oh, I'm sorry, I kind of lost it, so I'm gonna have to. Maybe we can go to John Freeman.
John Freeman, can you do it? Are you ready?
like I'm not
John, I just-
familiar enough with how to do it.
Ah,
John Richter, why don't you try
So
again?
let's just talk. John, just go ahead and
Yes, to
talk.
talk.
Forget about the slides. We know this stuff backwards and forwards.
Fair enough. All right. So in the 2022 rate cases for both consumers and DTE, there was actually a lot of similarity. In both cases, they proposed slashing the outflow credit, the credit that solar customers get for energy they put back on the grid, down to the wholesale rate, which is only about 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. DTE also proposed forcing solar customers onto a different rate plan, a different tariff with a large fixed demand charge every month. That was rejected, and in both cases, the Public Service Commission increased the outflow credit slightly, setting it to be the total power supply rate, which includes the transmission costs, which after all, we're bypassing by feeding power into the grid right on the distribution system. Secondly, both utilities must now submit a tariff for solar customers after the cap on the DG program has been reached. So this cap has been a real problem, and we have now convinced the commission that we need to set up a new tariff for what happens to solar customers after that cap is reached. The two utilities must each also submit a proposal for a community solar program, which will allow customers who maybe can't put a solar system on their house to subscribe to a larger solar system as if they owned a part of it. Thirdly, DTE must submit a proposal to purchase renewable energy certificates that represents the greenness of our power from distributed generation customers. Now, I'd like to point out that idea was not mentioned by anyone else in the case. That was solely a GLREA recommendation, and the commission fully approved it. Now, in a settlement, consumers agreed to lift their cap on the DG program to 4% of their summer peak capacity. Legally, they're mandated to support at least 1% of capacity. They had previously agreed to increase it to 2%. Now they increased it to 4%. So that's going to buy us a couple of years before we hit the cap with consumers' energy. DTE, however, refused to lift their cap, and the MPSC cannot force them to do it. It's legislated in law. The utility can agree to do it, or they cannot. Perhaps coincidentally, in that rate case, the MPSC refused and rejected 92% of the rate increase that DTE asked for, granting only 8% of the increase, which I've never seen them do before. I'd like to think those two things are related, but we really don't know. Consumers also submitted their integrated resource plan. We went through that entire case. That's completed. They have proposed a major program of buying or leasing the output of solar facilities, 300 megawatts each in 2022 and 2023. That's an enormous amount of solar. 500 megawatts in 24 and 25, 200 megawatts in 2026, and another 500 megawatts each in 2027 and 2030. So Consumers Energy is full on board, full throttle going down the solar avenue. They had also proposed buying 3 natural gas plants from their non-regulated affiliates based on a bidding process that was very limited and probably didn't yield true market prices. And in the settlement, they agreed not to do that. And instead, they're going to bid out for 500 megawatts of dispatchable power, which will probably be a gas plant, and 400 megawatts of solar that will not be from consumers or affiliate companies. So again, consumers is going heavily the solar direction. DTE has also submitted an integrated resource plan. They have not, that plan's just getting started. That case isn't completed yet at all. They're proposing that in the first 5 years, they're going, that's between 2023 and 2027, they will purchase 800 megawatts of solar and 240 megawatts of batteries. And they're going to convert the Bell River power plant that's currently burning coal to burn natural gas instead. That's then going to allow them to retire half of the gargantuan Monroe coal burning power plant in 2028. And during the period of 2028 to 2032, they're going to add 3,600 megawatts of solar, 1,000 megawatts of wind, and 520 megawatts of battery. So they're getting off to a slower start, but in that second 5-year period, they're going heavily renewables as well. And then in the second 10 years of the plan, they're going to build some more solar, a bunch more wind, and they're going to retire the Bell River plant and retire the second half of the Monroe plant, assuming they find some kind of magical new dispatchable low carbon source that they haven't yet identified. So that's kind of what, in a nutshell, what we've been doing in the cases before the MPSC. I think we've had some tremendous success there. That's been a great story for us in 2022. We also worked on the legislature, which was more of a miss, not so much a hit. The cap on participation in the DG program was set by the state legislature back when net metering was passed in 2008. The House Energy Committee was chaired by Representative Joe Bellino of Monroe, which is a DTE stronghold. They have both their Fermi nuclear power plant and their massive Monroe coal burning power plant in the Monroe area there. So we had a bill in the House to remove the cap on DG participation. And we believe we had the votes to actually get that out of committee and out onto the House floor. However, we couldn't really find out because Chairman Bellino would not schedule a vote for it in the committee, and it died in committee. So that didn't work out terribly well, but 2023 is a new year. Mr. Bellino was term limited, has left the House. He's moved on to the Senate, and we have two new committee chairs in the House, Representative Helena Scott and Sean McMahon, both Democrats. We have a Democratic-controlled legislature now. We're hoping that we have a much better shot at getting that bill through. We also hope to pass a community solar bill that will allow a third-party owned solar facility to have subscribers who will then get a credit on their utility bill. And we have allies in the House and the Senate that are drafting bills. Just this afternoon, I sat in on the Senate the Senate Energy Committee meeting, and two of the folks there, well, one of them explicitly expressed favoring removing the cap, and two of them talked about providing new authority for the MPSC to actually force utilities to reduce carbon emissions in alignment with the Michigan Healthy Climate Plan. So that was also very heartening. And that's all I have. I think, should I take questions at this point, or do we want to go on?
Yeah, let's wait and let's have John give his presentation, and we'll take questions on both. Okay.
Okay, very good.
John Freeman, are you ready?
Yep. I'm just going to say a few words, and mostly to elaborate a little bit on John's comments. I want to go back to the rate cases, though. One of the reasons why we have been successful is that we have been able to get more of our members involved in the process. This Public Service Commission, all three of the commissioners have been appointed by Governor Whitmer. So they're very progressive relatively to the previous public service commissioners that have been appointed by previous governors who tend to be more conservative. So one of the results is that there are a lot more public hearings going on for these cases. And these three people that are on the Public Service Commission, we should understand that they're political appointees. And so they're susceptible to pressure or being nudged by the public. And so we want to try, and every time there's a public hearing, we want to make sure that we get a good representation of our members, and for that matter, the general public, to attend these meetings. The case that the commission only granted $30 million when DGE requested 377, they held a public hearing in Detroit, and literally out of the 50 speakers, 48 were totally against the proposal by DTE. And so that made a really fundamental impression upon the three commissioners who were there. And we had a number of GLREA members speak, including John Richter and Janice Means, and a few others. So we also, Mark Clevey mentioned the do-gooder software. We also had many members utilize that software to send emails to the public service commissioners, as well as send emails to legislators, whom in turn we asked them to contact the Public Service Commission, urging them to vote no on DTE's proposal. And so we had as I recall, around over 300 people send emails to the commission. So that's another form of gentle pressure, or to put on the commission to help us in these cases. And so we want to continue utilizing those tools. And so the membership of GLREA, he'll hear from me and from John Sarver in various forms of communication about any upcoming hearings that we really want people to potentially attend, as well as to utilize the do-gooder software, which we'll make available to you at the appropriate times. In terms of the legislature, same thing. Every 2 years, the legislature and the House starts over again. As John mentioned, we have new committees in the House and the Senate. And the House Energy, it's now called the House Energy Communications and Technology Committee. It consists of 10 Democrats and I think 8 Republicans. And Helena Scott is, as John mentioned, is the chair of the committee, and she is from Detroit. And so once our bills are up for a hearing, once the bills are drafted and they've been introduced, then they will be assigned to the House Energy Committee. And obviously the same thing in the Senate. Senate bills, once they're drafted and dropped in the hopper, the Speaker of the House or the Senate Majority Leader, they will appoint the bills to the appropriate committees. So once they're scheduled for a committee, we're going to want our members to send emails to people on the committees to urge them to vote yes in support of the bill coming out of the committee. Now, unfortunately, because our screen sharing isn't working, I have a couple of slides that show all the members on the House Energy Committee as well as on the Senate Energy Committee. I'll send this information out to all of you, as well as the PowerPoint, so you can get it. Obviously, if where you live is where a member of the committee resides, that you will have even more influence with that committee member than someone who lives in a different part of the state. But it's still important that even though the representative that's on the committee may not be the one that represents you, it's still important for you to take the time to send them an email, because the responsibility of members on these committees is to make sure these bills are good bills and to pass them out to the floor of the Senate or the House. And so they need to represent the entire state. But it clearly is more effective if you're from that same committee member's district. And so we'll try and get as many of our members who live in those districts to communicate with their legislators.
John, this is Mark. Could you take a second, John, for people that may be sort of new to this process? Is the idea of going to Lansing, finding a place to park, walking into that huge building, figuring out where the hearing room is, going in and trying to figure out how do you testify and how do you do it? Could you just walk through that process, starting with somebody's going to be in the lobby waiting for you if you're going to come to testify, and we're going to get you there and walk you through it. Talk about that process.
Well, the committees they have different regularly scheduled times for when the committees meet, and they meet in the same location every time. And they send out an agenda minimally 48 hours in advance. And on the agenda, which I'm on the mailing list for the agendas for the House Energy and probably Senate Energy, I will get the notice in advance, and I will send out an email to the members indicating what time and the location of these meetings. These meetings are open to the public. The purpose of the meetings, of these committee meetings, is to hear about the bills. The sponsor of the bill will first testify about the bill, and then different members of the public, pro or con, they have the right to to submit a card and to present testimony as well. And there's nothing to be scared about testifying, because these legislators, before they were elected, they were just like you and I, just regular citizens. And so, and a lot of these legislators, frankly, may not know anything more about these bills than you do. In fact, you may know more about these bills because, in fact, you really are a passionate
For
believer
sure.
in renewable energy. So if, in fact, there's a particular committee hearing where one of our bills, the 1% bill, the community solar, is coming up, and if people do want to drive to Lansing, we will make sure that we will be there to help you get signed in. You have to fill out a little card, and we give it to the committee chair or the committee clerk, and then they will call upon various individuals. Sometimes there are so many people that want to testify that we need to call the committee clerk in advance, or sometimes the staff person for the chair of the committee, to make sure there's a time slot available for you. Because sometimes these committee hearings generally last an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And so sometimes they just know that there's too many people have signed up. Everyone's not going to be able to speak. And so what happens a lot of times is that they will take a couple of committee hearings to allow everybody to speak. But it's really important that legislators hear from the public, because we know for a given fact they will hear from the lobbyists. And in this case, DTE Consumers Energy, they have professional full-time lobbyists that all they do is work the legislature. And then they also hire other lobby firms to also lobby on their behalf. And so it's really important that members of the public also share their opinions about these bills, because ultimately legislators are accountable to the voters of the state of Michigan, and they want to make sure they're on the right side of history. And just like John Richter said in today's Senate Energy Committee, even though the 1% bill wasn't even up for a hearing, they were already talking about that. And so that's a very good indication that this legislature will be more receptive to these bills than the previous legislature.
John, will you help people structure their comments to, if they want to come in? I mean, what to say,
Sure.
how long it should be,
Sure.
about 200
Sure.
words, 100 words, 50 words?
Well, you usually get to
No?
speak for 3 to 5 minutes. That's typically how long you have. And I can certainly generate talking points. I can certainly put together a sample script. But it's also important, though, that people talk with their own voice. In other words, we don't want you to read what I write, because I want you to feel comfortable with what you're saying is something that you would normally say. And you don't have to be an expert about the subject matter. Even the general points carry a lot of weight. For instance, I want to be able to have a solar system on my home or my business because I want to save money from having to pay high utility bills, and I want to contribute to a cleaner environment. And I know that solar is clean energy. There's no carbon pollution associated with it. And I'll be doing my part to be able to contribute to a cleaner environment. And at the same time, I'll be saving money. And then, another kind of classic comment is that by giving people the option of installing a solar system, we're actually creating more of a competitive market. And that may actually force the utilities not to raise rates as much, because if they keep raising rates, they'll keep losing customers. And it's a kind of a negative feedback cycle. So literally, that is all you really have to say in so many words, because it really captures the moment, which is people should have the option now on where they get their electricity from. We know they'll save money by installing your own solar system. We know it's clean energy versus fossil fuel or natural gas, which continues to generate carbon pollution. And then thirdly, we also know that it's a competitive marketplace, and the utilities, who previously had a complete monopoly on energy, and there was really nothing stopping them from raising the rates. Now they know that if they keep raising the rates, they're likely to continue to lose customers. And so that is the type of presentation that one could say in 3 to 5 minutes that would be effective. But the bottom line, as Mark asked me, is that yes, we can generate, a memo with talking points, and then in advance of the committee hearing, you can take these talking points, write out sentences that express those points in paragraphs that you would be comfortable in saying.
What about how you would address it? Just assume, John, that you are just sat down. There's a microphone in front of your face. The chairperson of the committee is a woman. And what is your introductory remark, Madam Chairman, or thank you so much for letting me speak today? What do you say? How do you start it?
Well, it's you just say, thank you, committee chair Scott, or committee woman Scott. I mean, the key thing is to be respectful. That's what really matters, because you're there we're essentially courting them. We want them to vote yes. And so you want to treat them with respect and dignity. And so it's really nothing secret. So you just say, my name is John Freeman. I live in Madison Heights, Michigan. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the House Energy Committee about a bill that I think is very important. This is House Bill, whatever the number is, and we won't know the number until the bill gets introduced, but we'll find out the number. And then this is about eliminating the 1% cap. The 1% cap is an outdated piece of legislation that was enacted back in 2008. And pretty soon, if we don't change the law, DTE is going to hit this 1% cap. And once they hit it, they're legally no longer obligated to connect people to the grid. So you just want to kind of talk about the issue with a couple of facts, and then you want to relate those facts to your own personal situation. Again, how the utility rates keep going up every year. Just John Richter knows that I think it was yesterday, that DTE filed a new rate case, and they're asking for a 14% increase in residential rates. Now think about that.
God.
Are people's wages going up 14%? No. How much is inflation? Well, it was 4% a year ago. Now it's down to about 3.5%. It's come down fairly dramatically. So why in goodness gracious is DTE asking for a 14% increase in rates? It's unconscionable. It's immoral. DTE's rates, as well as consumers, are one of the highest in the upper Midwest. And this creates real hardship for people. And so by giving people the option of installing solar, then they have an alternative to buying utility electricity. And the reason why community solar is so important is that there are a lot of people that live in apartments or condominiums, or maybe whose roof of their home doesn't face south, or they can't afford the full upfront cost of installing a solar energy system, which is around, $10,000 to $15,000. And so by having community solar be a law, a third-party developer can create a solar farm someplace, and individuals can buy 2, 3, 4, 5 panels or subscribe to those panels, and they buy however many they can afford with their cash flow. And then however much energy those panels generate then gets credited back to the person's utility bill through DTE and consumers. And the reason why we need to enact this law is that we need to require the utilities to work with the third-party developers. They could do it right now if they wanted to. But again, DTE and consumers have been used to a business model where they've been completely in charge of both generation of energy and the distribution of energy. And they've liked this monopoly model because they can do pretty much whatever they want. And the reason why we're all about solar is to give people the option. So community solar is so important because we want to make sure that low and moderate income families, communities of color, people can afford to pay to be able to purchase solar panels to help them save money and to enable them to participate in the solar revolution where we're trying to move away from fossil fuels to clean renewable energy.
John, talk about what a community solar is. So it's a bunch of solar panels sitting someplace generating electricity. How does that get to my apartment?
Well, it doesn't get to your apartment directly, because what happens is the energy from the solar farm all gets put up on the grid. But the third-party developer who runs or manages the community solar system, they know however many people have subscribed or purchased panels from this community solar. So let's say this community solar has 100 panels and John Freeman buys 6 panels. So they will have set up with their computer system that however much energy those 6 panels is generating, even though that electricity is going to the grid, that same amount of energy will be credited through my utility bill to my home. And so on my bill, it will show that the amount of kilowatt hours that those 6 panels generated will be credited to my account, and that I will then not have to buy as much electricity from DTE. The beautiful thing about community solar is that the Internal Revenue Service has already indicated that the investment tax credit will apply to those 6 panels that a homeowner purchases from that community solar. So even though those solar panels are not physically located on your roof, you can still, take the 30% investment tax credit, apply it to the purchase of those 6 panels at the community solar site, and that reduces the cost of purchasing those panels. So it's a great system. But the key thing about community solar is that it enables everybody to be able to purchase solar energy. Whereas right now, there are some barriers, whether it's a physical barrier that you have to have a roof, a home that faces south. You have to have a roof that faces south, or you need to be able to afford the upfront cost of installing a solar system. Now, just so you all know, and I think most of you know this already, solar panels are warranted for 25 years at a minimum. And so once you pay off your own solar system, or you pay off buying the panels at a community solar farm, it may take 6, 7, 8 years to pay it off. But once you pay it off, then you're going to get essentially free electricity for the next, 15 to 20 years from those same panels. So it's even though you pay money up front, you're gonna really welcome a lot of returns for many, many years.
So John, the utilities are talking about this too. The utilities are talking about this too.
Lee's got his hand up. Is that Lee?
All right.
Yeah, I'd
Can't
like
see
to
you,
add to
Lee.
your comments about community solar. Number one, we may find a friendly legislature because the representative that co-sponsored the bill in last session, a Republican, has moved to the Senate.
Right.
And so we know that we have at least one Republican participant, and so this could easily become a bipartisan bill, just the way it was in the House
Right.
last session.
And the legislator that Lee is referring to is a woman named Michelle Hoytiga from Cadillac. She was in the House and she's moved to the Senate. And Jeff Irwin, the state senator from Ann Arbor, the Democrat, he's the other legislator in the Senate that is introduced, has submitted a bill draft for the community solar. We want to try and make it bipartisan because that's a great way of getting some votes from both parties. And Governor Whitmer I've heard from many sources, she's very interested in trying to get bipartisan support for many, if not all, of these energy bills. And so that's a great plug, Lee. I appreciate that. Marcia Curran, one of my favorite. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I finally got a new heat pump. And
Great.
in connection, I understand that it's possible to get tax write-offs if you buy heat pumps. And heat pumps are going to be purchased a lot, I think, in the future, because we're being told they should be, and we're supposed to use them to get off gas and all the other nasty stuff. Anyway, that means that energy companies are going to sell more electricity. Come on. We have to make them look at it differently than they have been, I think. I think it's very important. And I would be great if at one of your programs you went through all of the different benefits that individuals can possibly get from the IRA and its many funds.
Marcia,
Yes.
I think it's a great idea. We had Will Kenworthy of Vote Solar do an initial presentation last October about the Inflation Reduction Act. Then we kind of had him do a repeat performance at the Year on Year Begin meeting. But it was a pretty much his presentation was kind of a general presentation. And what I think you're suggesting makes a lot of sense, that we really narrow down the Inflation Reduction Act to all the tax credits that are available, not just for
Mhm.
solar, but Marshall, you're absolutely right. For heat pumps, energy efficiency matters. There's a whole slew of these things that are available. And I don't know if y'all read like the last couple of days, but Governor Whitmer has put in a bill, and I think it's moving to give a tax credit for purchasing an electric vehicle in Michigan to kind of encourage people to buy an electric car and to bring down the cost a little bit more, because electrification of transportation is a major component to her Michigan Healthy Climate Plan. And you're right, Marcia. You know, the DTE and consumers, they're going to be able to gain greater market share for electricity, because as cars shift from buying gasoline to electricity, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get an electric car, but probably will never get a solar system. And so they're going to be buying more electricity from DTE.
Right.
And so the little bit of electricity they lose from people generating solar, I think the utilities are more going to make up for it with the electrification of cars, as well as the other major phase, Marcia, which I'm sure you realize as well, as you mentioned, the heat pumps, or more importantly, the electrification of heating for homes and buildings, you know, so.
Cooling.
Yes.
Mhm.
Heating, cooling. Well, right, I think the deadline for writing a lot of the regulations and rules for how those credits are going to be made available to whom and under what circumstances is coming up very soon. So I think we should wait till that happens, and then we'll have a clearer picture of how it works and what we can do.
Probably this summer, we can put on our workshop seminar on that, on our renewable energy seminars here. We can do that. By the way, there's a lot of good comments and links in the chat. People have been putting information back and forth in the chat, so there's a lot of good connections there. John, I wanted to say one thing about the community solar stuff, that our utilities are talking about, that they want to be the ones who do community solar, and they'll take care of it. And if you want community solar, just buy it from us, and but if their rates go up 14%, all of their green power rates are going to go up 14% too. So buying into a solar farm or a community solar array, you're going to know what your price of electricity is going to be for the next 25 years. DTE knows their price of electricity is just going to go up and up and up and up and up as much as they can, because they're going to do what the market will bear, and that means what they can force onto the marketplace. So be aware about that.
It is an irony that
It is an irony.
as the utilities, DTE consumers, as John Richter pointed out, as they close coal plants, they're shifting to building, wind turbines and a lot more utility scale solar, which is good. We want them to do that. But we also know that the cost of generating electricity from wind turbines and solar is a lot less costly to generate than, frankly, coal, nuclear power, or even natural gas. And so the utilities, as they make this transition, they are saving money in terms of generating electricity, but they are not passing the savings on to the average ratepayer. And in fact, the rates keep going up every year. And so that's one of the ironies, is that even if individuals install solar, they're going to save money. But as the utilities install solar and wind, they're not passing on the savings at all to the residential or small businesses,
Right.
Which is why we need to make sure that people continue to have the option of installing their own system, because that is truly the only way to take control of your energy expenditures, is if you're in charge of your own destiny. And now we have the technology to do that. And we just need to make sure that the policy is there to continue to support that option. Lee, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd like to point out that what John said about consumers getting the move on as far as solar goes, I can vouch for that, because in the last 2 weeks, I've received 3 solicitations from energy companies who want to lease land for solar. One of them said, your parcel's kind of small. They identified one parcel that's 35 acres. And they said, we want you to understand that that the only way that we're going to offer to lease your land is if the community solar program in Michigan passes. And,
Right.
but the one thing about describing community solar, both of our Johns, thank you very much for being so involved in GLREA. You mentioned community when you were talking about people with trees or people with apartments. And I'd like to take the completely other side of community solar and say we should also change our narrative a little bit to include the idea that there's many farmers and there's many townships who think I've got a brownfield, I've got a place that I could put in a 5 megawatt solar system. And, you know, there are 1,240 townships in Michigan. And if we put 5 megawatts in each one, that would be 6,000 megawatts.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
so the question is whether the guy that called me from Washington State or the one that called me from North Carolina, do they really know the special places in those 1,200 townships that would take community solar and fit into the community? They don't. And so this legislation would be, to me, more beneficial to Michigan if it included the people who could subscribe, but it also could include the people that have land in special places that are especially near a rural substation where no one would have to change the size of the infrastructure, and we could have 6,000 megawatts in the state. And so that's the reason I called you, John Freeman, the other day and said, I want some input into community solar because we should build it from the other side as a participant, just like it is built from the user of electricity in their home.
So true.
No, I agree, Lee. I mean, giving farmers the option of utilizing some of their land will help maintain the small family farmer because it provides a source of regular income for the farmer so that they can then keep the farm in the family. And so I think that's right. And, you know, we have a gentleman, Charles Gould, who works for the Michigan State Extension Service. And over the years, we partnered with him to put on conferences, and he talks a lot about how farmers can benefit from solar as well as wind turbines too.
Yeah, he's got a program coming up on the 27th and on the 22nd of this month out in Ottawa County. And he's working very hard to have a good presentation. But what's interesting is that the REAP program from the USDA have changed from 25% cost share to some cases 40% cost share for rural businesses that would build either their own system or maybe community solar business, right? And so he's emphasizing that in his presentation on the 22nd.
Yeah, we should be clear with everybody, the REAP funding that Lee is mentioning is a source of funding from the Department of Agriculture at the federal level. And they provide low interest loans, as well as previously it was a 25% grant for building a solar system or energy efficiency. And it sounds like what Lee is just saying that maybe recently they bumped it up to close to 40%, which is great. You know?
Well,
So-
Debbie
And to be a rural business, you can be in a village up to 50,000 people and still be considered a rural business. And so we have a lot of opportunity in that area.
Go ahead, Marcia.
The other thing that DCE has done in this area is come out and ask people if they are willing to have carbon dioxide injected into the subterranean stuff down in the ground.
Interesting.
And they've suspended that program right now because of the pushback,
Right.
but it shows that they're working both sides of the street and talking out of both sides of their mouth.
Sure. Go ahead,
Always.
Marcia.
Oh, I just wanted to say that Debbie Stabenow is chair, I'm sure still, of the Agriculture Committee. They're going to have a new bill. It's every 5 years. And I think this year they have to have another bill. And she has been so effective in getting that kind of money to be used. And
Yes.
that agriculture bill has huge amounts of money for this sort of thing. But you can't get it if you're a nonprofit. That doesn't,
No, it's gotta be a farmer.
There are lots of things that are not, people that are not able to get that kind of money, but small businesses, And I think local governments for their buildings and things like that, yeah. we
Mhm.
should be
Yes.
promoting.
And
It's
Debbie's
okay.
retiring and we need to find a good voice to replace her.
Yes, indeed. Well, we're down to 7:50. We got about 10 more minutes. John Richter or John Freeman, you got any wrap-ups you want to do? Anything you want to tell us about 2023 we should watch for beyond community solar and the cap?
Well, I just want to throw out a shout out to Renee Hesselink. Renee is going to be a part of a GLREA Solarize program in West Michigan as a part of the Solar Up program. I was on the call today with 2 GLREA members that are working with her, and they mentioned that she is the host of it. And so I just wanted to thank Renee for agreeing to participate in the Solarize effort. And I think it's great that she will be sharing information about why solar is good and everything. So I have the last 2 newsletters this week. At the third item under the weekly update has been about this Solar Up event that's taking place. I think it's on February 16th. And so if anybody wants to participate in that, if you don't have a solar system already and you want to learn about the Solarize program, you're welcome to sign up and participate in that program. And so thank you, Renee. Are there any other questions, Mark, in the chat that people want us to respond to?
There's a lot of stuff in there. I know John Richter's been going back and forth on some of this. John, do you want to highlight any of your answers? I don't know where John goes.
Well, just there was a question about, the IRA and the tax credits and things on that. And a lot of that is still somewhat uncertain, but I did put in a link there from Electrek. Had a really nice write-up, particularly of the rebate program. So we're not talking a 30% cost share. We're talking about a cash at the point of sale for low-income people, but that's up to 150% of your average area income. So where I live, that's $90,000, that's $130,000 a year. And the grants are huge. An $8,000 rebate for buying a heat pump, for example. And if you have to do electrical work to support that heat pump, another $4,000 for that. So just as an example. So I thought the rebate program is something I haven't seen a lot in the news, and it looks really more lucrative, if I can use that word, than the tax credit.
Outstanding.
But I think Marcia's right. We need to put together a succinct memo about all these tax credits that are available, put it in one of our newsletters, and then we should hold a renewable energy seminar about that.
Yes, for
Mark,
sure.
We got 2 more hands. We got John, and then I think we got Rick.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I put my question in the chat, but it got swamped by lots and lots of comments about the IRA, which are good and helpful. But I was a lot closer to home. DTE is switching to time of day rates for everybody in March. And I'm wondering what's going to happen to my net metered solar installation. What's going to happen to my bank of kilowatt hours, and how are they going to bill me in the future? Does anybody know?
Well, John, I'm going to answer that question in kind of a roundabout fashion. We have been working, John Richter and myself, Dale Klein, and members of the GLREA Utility Michigan Public Service Commission Committee. We have put together a 10-page memo, which is about the time of use and time of day rates, because the Public Service Commission is pushing these new rates in order to reduce the peak demand on energy during the day by raising the price of energy that people buy from the utilities during the hottest part of the day, and then lowering the price significantly for the non-peak hours of the day. And so we understand that understanding your utility bill, as complicated as it is, and now with these new time of use and time of day rates, it makes it even more complicated. And if you have a solar system, it makes it even more complicated. So we've designed this 10-page memo where we have what I would call a beta version. I will be glad to send it to you. And the first page is kind of a general executive summary. And then pages 2, 3, and 4 are essentially general information about how the utility bill is structured and some background information. And then pages 5 and 6 are specifically about DTE. Then pages 7 and 8 are specifically about consumers. And then page 9 is about people that have net metering, the old net metering program, which sounds like, John, you have it, John Sarver has it, I have it. And then the very last page of this memo is a glossary of terms. So I'm trying to get feedback on this memo because it's it's obviously a lengthy memo and it's fairly technical. And I want to make sure that we've written it in a way that people can understand. So I will send that to you, John, and then you provide feedback on it. And then we will edit the memo accordingly. And then at some point in the near future, probably within a couple of weeks, I'm going to send it out to the entire membership. And then we're going to hold another renewable energy seminar or solar story on this memo about how to read your bill and about the time of use and time of day rates specifically.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll look forward to that.
You're welcome, Marcia. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, thanks. I have a problem I'd like to get some ideas on if anybody has any. I got quotes on solar panels for my house, only to find out that my deed to my house has baked in it wording that there's something called an architectural control committee with the planned development developers who developed this neighborhood 50 years ago. It says they have final absolute say whether on anything you can do with your house, solar panels or the color of your door or anything. And I think that's ridiculous. After all this time, that I don't have the right in my own house to put on something like solar panels. So I'm wondering if there's some way or what kind of
I can help you do that on that one. So these are historical commissions. When I was an energy manager in Kalamazoo, we had to deal with this kind of stuff all the time. The good news is that solar hot water systems were put on 18th century houses all for years, and solar greenhouses, which they called clear stories, were on those houses and stuff like that. So there is no architectural covenant against something like a solar panel on a house, and there are historical precedents of them being on there all the time. So it's a really great book called.
Well, let me just.
Anyway, we'll find it. But MSU has a publication on putting solar on historical buildings, and the Architectural Association (AIA) has a publication on putting solar on historical buildings and stuff as well.
But there's another problem, Rick. There's a corollary to homeowners associations.
Yeah.
A lot of times they have ridiculous rules within these associations that sometimes prevent people from putting solar on their roofs.
Right.
Of all states, the state of Ohio recently enacted a statewide law that prohibits homeowners associations from preventing people from putting solar on their roofs. I had a conversation with Senator Rosemary Bayer, who is from West Bloomfield, about this problem. And I think she's on the Senate Energy Committee, and I think she'd be willing to sponsor a bill to pass a state law that would override these homeowners associations.
Excellent.
Yes.
One final question from Dave Curtis. Go ahead, Dave.
Yep, this is kind of general, I suppose, but I just wonder if someone like Marcia or anyone else that has put a heat pump in, or a heat pump water heater, or any of that type of functional stuff could maybe talk about, and I know we can't do it now, but talk about questions to ask, what you've gleaned from the process, and what to look out for, who's good at it, how to find that kind of information.
That sounds perfect. It sounds like Marcia should do a solar story on.
Oh, there you go.
But I want to say that in connection, they do have some requirements on the efficiency of the heat pump before you can get the write-off or whatever it happens to be that you're asking for. There's something called the, God, I can't read this. A Consortium for Energy Efficiency, CEE, and then it's CEE Advanced Tier Efficiency. Your heat pump has to meet that standard, whatever it is. I don't know. And I don't know if the one I got has. I'm going to ask specs, but I don't know.
But why don't we, I think that's a great idea, Dave, and I think we should talk about energy efficiency heat pumps. We
Yeah.
do have a member on our board, Alan Waller, who is with Geothermal, a company called Water Furnace. So maybe we should set up a solar story or two to talk about heat pumps and geothermal energy, and then
Yep.
have Marcia on to talk about the process she utilized and the questions she asked. I think that'd be great.
We have one on geothermal example from the Lansing area coming up in the near future, and we'll be on the lookout for air source heat pump, a good case study too, because I think geothermals are expensive, and a lot of people will look.
Mine is water connected. It's geothermal.
Oh,
Good.
yours is geothermal? Okay.
Yeah.
But I think air source heat pumps are a good option these days too, and we need to
Yes.
get some good case studies out through these Thursday evening Zooms too.
Okay,
bet.
last question from Pete.
I know we're running short on time, so I just yes or no answer will be great. We've talked about some of the things that are important for moving forward with the legislature for GLREA. Is talking about the distributed generation rates a part of that for the discussion of 2023?
Well, go ahead. Why don't, John, you want to talk about DG in terms of the Public Service Commission?
Yeah, well, so the distributed generation outflow rates have been an issue in every rate case since the law was passed, right? We argue about this every time. I think that's probably kind of stabilized now, knock on wood, I don't know. Right now it's at the power supply rate, which is about half of the retail rate.
But mention that we got a little bump up though in this last two cases.
Well, we did, and we're also going to get them to buy renewable energy certificates from DG customers. That'll be some additional income, and we'll continue to press to increase that and include part of the distribution charge. I don't know how far we'll get with that. There's certainly the possibility that the legislature ended net metering. The legislature could bring it back, but I haven't really heard a lot of traction on that. That hasn't been the point that's gotten talked about.
But the thing about the outflow credit, Pete, is that every time they raise the rates, the power supply obviously goes up. So the outflow credit is also going to increase as well. And if the utilities keep raising the rates, that's going to make installing solar more economical all the time. So it's kind of, it's a Hobson's box for the utilities. They don't want people getting solar, but they keep raising the rates, and that makes the financials for installing a solar more attractive. And now that we got a 30% tax credit at the federal level for the next 10 years, it's going to remain a good bargain for people to invest in solar. I have a dream, and just like Martin Luther King, this is my dream, is that rather that when our children graduate from college and we want to encourage them to stick around our area, if we can get community solar enacted, that a parent could buy a half a dozen panels for their children that graduates from college, and no matter where they move within DTE's turf or if they're in the consumer's turf, they will be able to take that electricity with them, whether they're in an apartment, a condominium, or their first home. And that way they can reduce the cost of setting up their household by taking control of their energy. So that's my dream. And now we just got to make it happen with this legislature.
Should be everybody's dream.
All right, everyone. This was a great talk. Thanks everybody for the chats, the good questions, the comments. We're glad you're here. We'll be doing these again. These solar stories or renewable energy seminars happen every Thursday of every single month. And I'll be doing renewable energy. It's coming up in the next couple months. We'll be doing similar ones, and John's will be doing the solar stories, and we'll be doing Ann Arbor and Detroit and all this stuff. So great stuff. And keep coming on and keep telling people about us. And if you haven't joined GLREA yet, please do. And if somebody in your family needs a birthday present, buy them a membership in GLREA. All right.